love the WWE Draft, and it's coming up at the end of April, and I'm very, very excited to see where everybody goes. It's gonna be kind of interesting to see now in this new era, the Triple H era, where everybody is going to land, what brands they will be on, what kind of shakeups we could see. This could be a much more interesting draft than we have seen in previous years from WWE. And also, could I just say, WWE, if you're doing a brand split, you're doing a draft, keep the brands separate, like for a while. None of this crossover stuff. Build the brands respectfully, as strong as you can, including NXT. But today, we're gonna go through and draft up and give you some of our predictions for where the champions will be drafted to. I first want to look at NXT because, number one, I don't think we're gonna see all the superstars from NXT get drafted, and on the champion side, I don't think we're going to see all of the champions get moved to Raw or SmackDown. But knowing that Roxanne Perez and Ilya Dragunov were both on Raw after WrestleMania, and they were both marked down as being available for the draft, seems like it's going to happen. I do think that both of these stars will get drafted and they'll drop the titles at the upcoming NXT events. Ilya is, well, I want to see Ilya versus Gunther. That's just what I want to see. Whether there's a belt on the line or not, I want to see that happen. But Ilya being the NXT champion, I do think he gets drafted while still NXT champion, and then he eventually drops the belt. Kind of like Braun Breaker brought to SmackDown, still NXT champion, tag team champion. So I think Ilya does the exact same thing. I'm going to say Ilya goes on Raw. Seems kind of fitting. He's all decked out in red. He was on Monday Night Raw. I think it'd be a good place for him. Roxanne Perez? Perez is interesting because I think that you got a baby face. Well, she's a heel right now, but you could flip her around very easily. There's a lot of shakeups that will happen. This is where I also feel like WWE really needs a mid-card women's title to balance these things out, because Roxanne Perez coming to the main roster, I think would be perfect for like a women's intercontinental champion. But I'm gonna say that Roxanne Perez ends up on SmackDown as one of the draft picks. But everybody, Obafemi, Nathan Frazier, Axiom, Charlie Dempsey, I think they stay right now. They stay in NXT. Obafemi should be main roster. Man's a beast. Okay, Kabuki Warriors, women's tag team champions. Also part of Damage Control, but I think Damage Control as a unit stays together. Do they go on Raw or SmackDown? I'm gonna say that Damage Control moves over to Monday Night Raw to try and freshen things up a little bit. That would also include Dakota Kai in this, but strictly speaking, the tag champions, move them over to Monday Night Raw. A-Town Down Under just won the SmackDown tag team titles at WrestleMania. I think that these guys will stay on SmackDown. I think WWE will do the clean cut thing of the tag team titles, just staying on the respective brands, not confusing the audience too much of like, okay, A-Town Down Under, SmackDown champions, they're gonna move to Raw, and then we get the funky hand the titles off kind of thing. Unless they want to rebrand the belts, which I hope they do, and we get WWE tag titles and world tag titles. But A-Town Down Under, I think they stay on SmackDown for the foreseeable future as SmackDown Tag Team Champions. Build those guys up. SmackDown's a good fit for them too, I feel. That also means that the Raw Tag Team Champions, Awesome Truth, I think they stay on Monday Night Raw. Truth is supremely over right now, and I think that you gotta give them a good shot of being that fun babyface act on Monday Night Raw, and Truth can mix it up with everybody, not necessarily just Judgment Day and continuing that story. I think that will start to get played out, but Truth can mix it up with anybody wherever they go. So Raw Tag Team Champions, they stay on Raw. Shocking. Logan Paul, and then I guess we go with the mid-card titles. Logan Paul, I feel, needs to change it up. He's great as a heel, but he has been with SmackDown this entire time. I do think it's time to shake it up, and you're gonna move the mid-card titles, mid-card champions to the other brands. I think what you do is you're gonna take Logan Paul and let's move him over to Monday Night Raw, because then he can shake it up with other people. It depends how the whole draft does kind of go overall. Like, does Randy Orton get drafted over to Raw? But you know what? Fun stories you can have with Logan Paul on Raw. For example, if things were kind of staying the same on the roster, I think you could do like Jey Uso versus Logan Paul would be a lot of fun. Ricochet, Logan Paul have had a thing. They could go at it again. Chad Gable, Logan Paul could be interesting if you want to do that. But it does start to feel like on the current setup for SmackDown, the current roster overall, Logan Paul has kind of gone through everybody. So I think a shakeup would help him a lot. Then that means for Sami Zayn, the Intercontinental Champion. I don't think Sami has a crazy long run with the IC title. Also, back up for a second. If Gunther stays on Raw, like with Logan Paul, or they end up on the same brand, you could do Gunther wins the United States Championship for a short run, but I do kind of want to see Gunther go off to world title stuff. But Sami Zayn with the IC title, I think you can move Sami over to SmackDown. Also, if Kevin Owens were to stay there too, then you got the alliance between those guys, and then you could shake up some fresh new matchups for SmackDown when it comes to Sami Zayn. It's possible that Chad Gable gets drafted over to SmackDown. Sami and Chad could continue their story, because I think Chad Gable is going to turn heel next. That means you could also move Alpha Academy over to SmackDown too, which would freshen things up for them. And you could end up with like AJ Styles versus Sami Zayn for the IC title, LA Knight versus Sami for the IC title. Bobby Lashley as Intercontinental Champion would be fantastic for his group. Solo, Jimmy, they could get a title, get a singles push, and do that, assuming that everybody else was staying the same, but they'll be shooken up too. But just saying, there's some healthy options if you do mix up the brands a little bit. AJ Styles versus Sami Zayn could be a lot of fun with AJ as a heel and give him a run as IC champion. That could really work. Next up is Bayley, the brand new WWE Women's Champion. I love Bayley's story at WrestleMania. It was really cool to see her win the belt. Where does Bayley go? Do you keep her on SmackDown, where if Kabuki Warriors did get drafted over to Monday Night Raw, they finally split off their story for like a year? That could be good to give Bayley some brand new challengers. Maybe you do see a Jade Cargill getting moved up a lot more. Bianca is a question mark. We got to do a whole video on the entire draft, which we will do, but Bayley's an interesting one. I feel like she is such a good fit on SmackDown that maybe you do keep Bayley there and you don't just flip her back over. So I'm gonna say Bayley stays on SmackDown. It just seems to work, but that might end up meaning that Kabuki Warriors, Damage Control, they move over to Monday Night Raw. So you need some new women getting over to SmackDown to be able to challenge. Maybe you bring over Liv Morgan, or you're gonna bring over somebody else and get her challenging for Bayley's title. So then Rhea Ripley, the World Heavyweight Champion. Rhea, I think Judgment Day might end up splitting up in the draft somehow. Rhea is amazing on her own. Judgment Day is in an interesting spot. Damian Priest is World Heavyweight Champion. Do you want to keep them together? Do you want to separate them and let them stand on their own for a while? And WWE probably would still do crossover stuff. PLEs are still around. Like, Dom just goes over to SmackDown because Santos calls him. So the draft is not totally important. Like if I said Rhea goes to SmackDown, Dom is gonna just show up on SmackDown whether he's drafted there or not. I'm gonna say Rhea stays on Monday Night Raw. Make her be that focal point, that fixture of Raw, kind of like Seth Rollins has been for years on Monday Night Raw. And then Raw is mommy and all of that stuff. So then you just have her running Monday Night Raw, but you need to then change up the women's division a lot. So like maybe it's Jade, Bianca, maybe they come over to Monday Night Raw and they could challenge Rhea. She needs new challengers, and for me with Rhea Ripley, she needs feuds. She needs big, impressive feuds that have length and they invest a lot of time in, not just like a 1 month thing. Need new challengers and for her to feel really threatened. So I'm gonna keep mommy on Raw. So that leads us to Damian Priest, the new World Heavyweight Champion. And I will say, this will then you can figure out where Cody's going, but I think Damian Priest needs to go over to SmackDown. Put the World Heavyweight Championship over on SmackDown. We have been living in the Tribal Chief world where the Undisputed Championship has been tied up on SmackDown and we don't get to see it every single week. You got a 2-hour show. I think also because Raw is 3 hours, SmackDown is 2 hours, I think put Damian Priest on SmackDown and lead the charge for SmackDown as that 2-hour program where the title is showing up more often. He's putting the title on the line on that show a little bit more frequently. You can tell new interesting stories with Damian Priest. You could end up with Punk and Drew all on SmackDown with Priest and mixing it up in there. And even Seth when he comes back from injury. Maybe he goes back to SmackDown, but maybe not. But I think Priest could really mix it up. If he goes over to SmackDown, think of like Randy Orton versus Priest, or LA Knight finally getting a world title shot and going against Priest. Gunther could show up. It depends how they use Priest. If they're gonna make him into a face or not. I think SmackDown would be a fresh air for him. Does Judgment Day go over there? Maybe, maybe not. I'd kind of like to see a split, and I would like to see if Priest can kind of hold his own individually as a champion for several months. It'd be kind of cool. Which then leads us to your brand new, undisputed WWE champion, Cody Rhodes. Cody Rhodes, I feel like, could end up on Monday Night Raw. And this whole thing I'm building out here, obviously he has to be on Raw. I think you put Cody on Raw for a couple of reasons. One, Cody's been going on both brands. But I think, like I just said, where Priest can really showcase himself on SmackDown, being more involved in a 2-hour show of like more title defenses, fresh new matchups. Cody is like big story guy with the bloodline and all that stuff. And you got a 3-hour block. I think you can have Cody in like multiple segments on Raw like we already do, and he can mix it up with different people. I'd personally love to see Randy Orton come over to Raw, and then Randy versus Cody is one of the feuds coming up. That's what I personally like to see because there's a ton of story there. But you can really mix things up. Gunther could stay on Raw and challenge Cody as a big contender. There's a lot of different interesting people that you could use if they change up the rest of the roster. The other piece is that Netflix is coming in 2025. And not that the brand splits are super hardcore and they stay true to their word with all of this stuff. They float everywhere. But if Cody is on Raw, Netflix is going to Raw. He is the brand new era, new champion, all of that stuff. He still has the story with Roman, Rock, Bloodline. And I think that because January is when Raw moves over to Netflix, you're going to want Cody on the cover of that thing. You're going to want the Bloodline, Rock story with Cody as a focal point going into Netflix in 2025. Yes, it's a ways away, but it's also not. They're months away from that. So they got to start. If Triple H is doing long gaming, long booking, you need to be able to set some pieces up and know where you're going come Netflix time, and you're going to want to really showcase that. So to me, the big champion, the big crowning achievement of Cody Rhodes winning the belt, he's your guy. You're going to want him on Raw to spear that show and to spear Netflix Monday Night Raw, or whatever Raw will end up being, but spearheading that on Monday Night Raw. And I think that's the direction you go there. But the other thing, do they change up any belts? There's a question to you guys. Do they change the tag team titles? Do they change the design of those come the draft? Because I personally think they could and they should. Put them in line with the world titles in terms of design and the WWE title. And one of the big ones for me, do you think they will finally introduce a women's mid-card title on main roster? We know that they're going to introduce the NXT North American Women's Championship. To me, they need that on main roster. Put the tag division for the women on one brand, put an Intercontinental Women's Championship on another brand like Raw, and go that path. But what do you want to see out of the draft? Where do your champions, where do these champions go in your mind? And if you guys enjoy videos like this, click right here, because this is talking about AEW and, well, everything that went down the other night. And it was kind of wild, wasn't it? Anyways, thank you so much for watching. Enjoy the show, enjoy the day, subscribe to the channel. I'll see you on the next one. Bye.